Greetings everybody, my name is Tommy the Game Master and welcome again to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a video that Review Tech USA did about a week ago, talking about being old and some of the insults that come people's way. Now that video was mainly about the fact that when Rich ever had a message that was negative to people, they would personally attack them, and being called fat and old is probably the least insulting YouTube criticism someone could get. I mean, I have received personal comments that I have deleted on this channel that would make people blush. I mean, kids today do have that problem of if we issue a personal attack, we automatically win the argument. It's the opposite. My thoughts towards this, Rich, and to the guy you were also talking about, if you receive those comments, ignore them. They don't really want to have a discussion with you. Okay, it's too scary for them, and they don't know enough to have that discussion. So do your best to just ignore them. Anyways, when it does come to being gaming my age, it's important to understand that people who are in their mid-30s, we have probably seen more change in the world since probably anybody ever growing up. When I was a small kid, my family still had a rotary dial telephone. Okay, if you don't know what that is, that means you have to stick your finger in, dial, pull it all the way back, wait for it to go all the way back, and that's dials one number. Then you have to do it again for all 10 digits. It takes freaking forever compared to a touchtone phone. Then I remember as a teenager not to go online when anyone was either talking on the phone or expecting a phone call because the internet took up your phone line. Nowadays, if the internet goes off on someone's phone, they panic. That's how much things have changed. And because we have seen this change and we know the technology around this change, we can kind of adapt to it better, I think, people my age. The younger kids don't know how to live without it, and the older people sometimes don't know how to use it. But because of that, people like Rich and people like the guy he was talking about when it comes to the iPhone, he seemed like he was competent. Yeah, he had gray hair, but he did seem like he was competent about it. Know these things and know what we're talking about a bit more, I think, than some of you young scamps, and it's a good thing. Majority of the people I see complaining about the game industry these days are people in their mid-30s when it comes to YouTubers, Rich, Jim Sterling, and a few others. Late 20 at the earliest, usually in their mid-30s, because we remember what the game industry is when it's at its best. When it's at its best, they make good games, and they also care for the fact that, we consumers are giving them money. In this generation of console, and I've complained about this for a long time as well, it's probably the most anti-consumer generation of console I have ever seen, ever. And I mean, it's just pathetic. There has been plenty of good things to come out. I mean, indie games are really rocking. There's a lot of new ideas and new technology coming out. But when it comes to the big publishers, yeah, I mean, I've gone through this before. I talked about the NBA 2K. I've talked about the death of AAA gaming before. And I'm going to say, as an old man, I see big trouble coming for it because you don't treat consumers like this for very long. Because when they do, crashes happen. And I do see a AAA gaming crash or a big change coming. And when I say anti-consumer, what do I mean about it? Well, when I was a kid and we bought a new game back in the days of that rotary phone I was talking about, the only thing that would keep you from immediately enjoying the game was getting it out of the freaking box. Nowadays, I have to come home, get it out of the box, put it on my console, enjoy a half an hour install, which, don't get me wrong, I can understand why games are freaking huge compared to what they were back then, and it's needed, so I'm not going to immediately complain about that. But instead of playing it right after I install it, even if it's a brand new, right off the shelf game, I oftentimes have to wait several more hours to even a day for it to download a freaking patch that the game developers had put in because they hadn't really quite finished it when they put it on the disc. Meaning that if I don't have internet connection, which is also something that's happened. I had to tell a person not to put in a game they put that I gave them until they had an internet connection because I wouldn't know if it would work right because of the first day patches. It takes sometimes several hours to another day for them to download the patches because, again, the publishers don't want to spend the money to freaking finish the game. That irritates me. That's probably one of the things that irritates me most about the modern day games. Not even finishing them and making sure they have a quality product. It is my internet um, usage that I'm using in order to download. It's my internet bandwidth that you're using to download that patch. It's also my hard drive, which makes the install a lot bigger than what you promised on the disk. So I also have to balance that as well, and that just pisses me off no end. And then finally, and yes, this has been much complained about, the DLC and the microtransactions. Now, I have no problems with DLC if people want to keep on working on a game they've already finished, already made a little money, to keep milking fans of the game out of a little bit more. If the DLC is good and if the DLC is fair price, there is nothing wrong with DLC. I don't think there's anything wrong with a little bit of microtransactions in some areas. However, big problems come up when you're asking me to pay $60 and the only way to really get anywhere in the game without losing my patience is to go spend another $20 or $30 on freaking microtransactions. People get pissed, and I do see this coming to an end. I'd say this has got 2 more years left of this type of thinking by the big publishers before there is a revolt. Gamers have options now thanks to digital distribution. Indie gamers are getting big, and while the Steam Greenlight store may be worse than trying to find an Atari game in the early 80s when it comes to quality, people also have other options and making sure that the good games rise. And a lot of indie games are rising. A lot of developers are going independent away from these publishers. And I hope there's some success there. And I hope the publishers get their freaking act together. I do miss the mid-term tier games of the PS2 and of the PS1. I do miss those types of games as well. Instead of having to go bigger and trying to shove every type of DLC down my throat and having unfinished games because of it. This really does need to stop. And yeah, now to get off my old man soapbox. There is a type of older person, though, going back to the rich, that is okay for you youngsters to poke fun of. And that's the people who don't see any good changes. Now, like I said, there's plenty of good changes these days. But there is a type of gamer out there, type of person out there, that any type of change from when they were a childhood, they will complain and nag about. That's why I kind of have the old man character in some of my videos. That's what he represents, because as someone in my mid-30s, I get really tired when other people my age act like they're in their 70s and 80s when it comes to change. A good example of this would be whenever I see something rebooted and just the complaints some people make because it's not the original. Let's see here. The first time I've really encountered this and poked fun of this would be when Metroid Prime came out. I remember that a lot of people never played Metroid Prime, saw them writing reviews on the internet, on Amazon and other websites about how much it sucks and it's not Metroid because it's a first-person shooter. But Metroid Fusion, that's a perfect example of what a great Metroid game. If you understand what Metroid is to a core, what makes Metroid Metroid, and what makes Super Metroid a classic, Metroid Prime has that in spades. It's non-linear, it allows you to explore, it allows you to collect the power-ups and go off the beaten path with them once you find them. Metroid Fusion, on the other hand, is a very linear, very just basically platform shooter game that has nothing that made the original Metroid charming whatsoever. But to these idiots, it didn't matter because they were never going to play them. And yes, I poked fun of them constantly on the message boards because it was so freaking obvious. Another good example of this, coming from a TV show reboot, was the newest Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Um, when that came out on Nickelodeon, it's not perfect, but I enjoy it. A lot of people enjoy it. It takes what made some of the classic Turtle things great, but it upgrades them, makes it darker, and gives some weight to it. A lot of people, again, just watching the message boards, haven't really watched the show, may have seen a trailer or two or a few minutes, but haven't really watched it. Come up and immediately start criticizing how the original show is automatically better because they don't know why, but it's just better. And it's like, these guys probably haven't seen the show since they were children, and I have. I take off my nostalgia glasses, and I can tell you this. The original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, when it was at its best, was a really great satire and parody show. When it's at its best, it was closer to Animaniacs than it was to Batman the Animated Series. The new Nickelodeon show is not perfect. I haven't seen it in a season or two, in fact, but that's just the way my cable box operates. It's hard to get it to record at that time. But I did watch the first several seasons, and it was really good, and it made a point to constantly reference the classic show and to let people know that, yeah, the people who made it are fans. But these type of people, it doesn't matter, and that's why I have the old fart character sometimes. I need sometimes someone to converse with, as well as just to poke fun of people who are like this, to prodigy to change or to understand that, they're no longer kids, and some of the stuff that's designed for kids isn't made for them. So yeah, if you encounter those type of people on the message board, feel free to call them old farts. They deserve it. But for the rest of us who are actually trying to make legit arguments, trying to tell people that not all change is good and that people need to step back and not support bad behavior, don't make fun of us. These are older guys trying to help you. This is Tommy the Game Master, thanking you for listening. I'll see you guys later.